Hi, my name is Travis. I'm a pizza delivery guy, and my nights are usually predictable. Driving familiar routes, handing over hot boxes, and hoping for a decent tip. Every shift follows the same routine, but that night was different. It started with an order for 6 pizzas to an address I didn't recognize. The house wasn't on any of my regular routes, and something about it felt off. But the promised tip was unusually generous, so I loaded the pizzas into my car without questioning it. As I drove through quiet, dimly lit streets, my unease grew. The neighborhood thinned out, and soon I was driving past fields and stretches of empty road. Then I saw it, a large weathered house standing alone at the end of a desolate street. No streetlights, no neighbors, just a single porch light flickering like a dying ember. I parked, grabbed the pizzas, and made my way to the door. As I knocked, an elderly woman answered almost immediately, as if she had been waiting. She smiled, a thin, lifeless smile, and motioned for me to come inside without a word. I hesitated, but before I could refuse, she stepped aside, forcing me to cross the threshold. The air inside was thick, musty, like old wood and something faintly metallic. The living room was dimly lit, and a group of elderly people sat in a circle, their expressions eerily blank. I set the pizzas on a nearby table, glancing at the floor. That's when I noticed it, a crude circle drawn in what looked like dried rust or blood. My pulse quickened. This wasn't a party. It was something else. Before I could react, the front door slammed shut behind me. The murmuring started low, almost like a hum. The old people, all of them, began chanting in a language I didn't understand. Their voices layered over each other, growing in intensity. A deep, rhythmic pulse filled the room, like the very air was vibrating. Then a large man stepped forward. Unlike the frail figures around him, he was massive, built like a linebacker, his face unreadable. Without warning, he struck me, hard. Pain exploded in my ribs as I collapsed onto the cold wooden floor. Panic surged through me. The chanting grew louder, the circle tightening around me. My breath came in ragged gasps as I scrambled to my feet, searching for any way out. The walls, lined with crude symbols, seemed to pulse with the energy of their ritual. Then I saw it, a window. I made my move. Desperation fueled me as I lunged at the man, sinking my teeth into his ankle. He let out a guttural roar, stumbling back just enough to break the formation. The chanting faltered, turning into confused shouts. I didn't waste a second. Kicking aside chairs, I bolted for the window. My fingers clawed at the latch, throwing it open. Cold air rushed in as I scrambled onto the ledge and leaped down, landing hard on the ground below. Pain shot up my leg, but I didn't stop. I ran, faster than I ever had, until I reached my car. Fumbling with the keys, I jumped inside and locked the doors. My hands trembled as I started the engine, my eyes darting back to the house. The figures stood motionless in the doorway, their blank faces illuminated by the porch light. The old woman was in front, and she was smiling. I sped off, not stopping until I was miles away. When I finally called the police and they arrived at the house, it was empty. No markings, no chanting, no sign that anything had happened at all. Just 2 elderly figures standing in the doorway, staring at the officers with vacant expressions. The cops didn't believe me. My coworkers laughed it off as some crazy delivery story. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And worst of all, before I left, as I looked back one last time, the old woman gave me a small nod and a wink, like she knew something I didn't. Now every time I take a delivery, I drive a little faster. I double-check the addresses. Because I know some places don't just want pizza, they want something more. And next time, I might not escape. My name is Jack, and I deliver pizza. My shift started like any other, riding my motorcycle through the city's tangled streets, handing off steaming pies to hungry customers. The job was routine, predictable, until that day. It began with a strange feeling, a presence I couldn't shake. On my first delivery, I noticed her, a woman on a bicycle, trailing me at a distance. I told myself it was nothing, just another commuter. But at every stop, Every turn, she was there, watching. By the third delivery, unease had crept into my bones. When I stopped at a quiet suburban house, she was already there, lingering by the front door. My stomach tightened as I approached. "Why are you following me?" I asked. She smiled, a serene expression that sent a chill through me. "Oh, you noticed. It's just a coincidence. We're headed the same way." Her words did nothing to calm me. Something in her eyes, an unsettling, unwavering focus, made my skin crawl. I forced myself to ignore it, but the sense of dread clung to me like a shadow. And then it happened. At my next stop, I barely had time to react. She stepped toward me, swift and deliberate, and before I could move, I felt a sharp prick in my arm. A syringe. My vision blurred. My muscles turned to water. My knees buckled, and the last thing I heard was the distant roar of my motorcycle skidding onto the pavement before the world faded to black. I woke up in darkness. My head pounded and my body felt foreign, sluggish. The air was stale, thick with dust and decay. A single weak beam of light crept through a small, grimy window. I was in a house. No, a prison. The walls were bare, the furniture sparse and battered. The door was locked from the outside. And then I saw her. She sat on a tattered couch at the far end of the room, watching me with an eerie calm. "I love you," she said, her voice devoid of warmth, as if stating an undeniable truth. "You're special. You belong to me." Panic gripped my chest. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tried to stand, but my limbs felt weak, drained. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body refused to obey. Time blurred. Days passed in slow, torturous increments. I studied the house, every creaking floorboard, every flickering shadow. She had a routine. Each day she left for short errands, sometimes forgetting to lock a door or secure a window. My only hope was patience. And then, my moment came. She was in the kitchen, murmuring into a phone. I moved, slow and silent, edging toward the window. My fingers trembled as I pushed it open. The cold night air bit into my skin, but I welcomed it. I climbed through, my breath ragged, my pulse a drum in my ears. I ran. The forest swallowed me whole, its skeletal trees stretching toward the sky like clawed hands. My legs burned, but I didn't stop. Branches tore at my clothes, at my skin. Behind me, the house sat in eerie silence, but I didn't dare look back. I burst onto a dirt road, lungs screaming for air. A car approached, a single beacon of salvation. I threw myself onto the pavement, waving frantically. The driver hesitated, then slowed. I didn't wait for an invitation. I yanked the door open and collapsed into the back seat. I was free. The police didn't believe me, not really. They investigated, but there was nothing solid. No evidence, no witnesses, just a pizza guy with a wild story and a missing block of time. They never found her. Her trail vanished as quickly as it had appeared. I still deliver pizza, but I'm not the same. I don't take the same routes. I don't let my guard down. Every shadow, every cyclist in my periphery sends a spike of fear through my chest. I joke about it sometimes. Imagine getting kidnapped over a pizza delivery. But I know the truth. Routine can shatter in an instant, and danger can ride up on a bike, hidden in plain sight. I planned a simple night in with my friends. Just some food, a few drinks, and laughter to unwind after a long day. Nothing grand, nothing unexpected. The order was placed online, confirmed with a few taps on my phone. Routine, predictable. The air in my apartment was already filled with familiar chatter as my friends gathered around the table, exchanging jokes and stories. I watched the clock, waiting for the delivery, completely unaware that this night would take a turn so dark that I would remember it forever. The doorbell rang at the expected time. I opened it to find a familiar face, a delivery guy I recognized from school. His features were older, but the nervous awkwardness in his eyes was unmistakable. There was no friendly greeting, no smile, just a stiffness in his posture and unease in his hands as he fumbled with the pizza bags. "Hey, man. Long time no see," I said, trying to break the ice. But he barely met my eyes, mumbled something about being busy, and turned away in a hurry. Something about his reaction unsettled me, but I brushed it off. Minutes later, the doorbell rang again. Confused, I opened it to find more pizza boxes neatly stacked on the doorstep. No delivery guy, no note, just more food than I had ordered. Guess he left us a little extra, I laughed, carrying the boxes inside. My friends cheered, assuming it was some kind of lucky mistake, and we started digging in. But with each bite, something shifted in the air. One by one, their smiles faded. A shadow of discomfort crept over their faces. Then chaos, screams of agony, bodies convulsing. The room transformed into a nightmare as my friends collapsed, writhing on the floor. I tried to call for help, but the panic swallowed my voice. Their faces twisted in pain, eyes rolling back, hands clawing at their throats. The laughter of moments before had turned into garbled cries for mercy. And then the door burst open. The delivery guy stood in the shattered doorway. He was no longer the nervous figure from before. His stance was solid, his face eerily calm, his eyes burning with something raw and unforgiving. "You invited me," he said, his voice ice cold, "like I was one of you." Before I could react, he moved. Fast, efficient, brutal. His fists connected with skulls. His boots crushed ribs. He wasn't just attacking, he was executing. I stumbled back, my body frozen in place as he turned toward me, his breathing slow and steady, as if he had been waiting for this moment. "You all knew," he whispered. "Knew what?" My voice barely came out. His lip curled in disgust. "You never told me." Told him what? My mind scrambled for answers. Then as he spoke, the truth unraveled like a noose tightening around my throat. One of my friends had once slept with his mother. When she refused to leave her husband for him, she was killed. My friend's father, a man with political power, had covered up the crime, burying the evidence. And we, unknowingly or not, had erased him from our lives, just as his mother had been erased from his. This was not about pizza. This was about vengeance. I had nothing to do with it, I tried to say, but the words felt empty, meaningless. His glare told me everything. "You invited me here tonight," he said, voice trembling with fury. "You laughed, ate, like none of it mattered." Before I could respond, the room spun. My body weakened. I felt myself slipping. Was it the food? The shock? Darkness crawled at the edges of my vision, and before I knew it, everything went black. When I woke, silence hung heavy in the air. My head throbbed as I forced myself upright, taking in the aftermath. The bodies of my friends lay piled in the corner, lifeless. The room, once filled with warmth, was now a graveyard of broken furniture and cold corpses. I was the only one left. The delivery guy was gone. The extra pizzas, the unease, the violence. It had all led to this. A massacre born from a secret I had never known. But whether I was guilty or not no longer mattered. I was alive, and that somehow felt worse than being dead.